from circumstances like this, with the way this summer's went down, cases like Josh Gordon and Ray Rice. I think it's a beyond foregone conclusion that things will be rectified as far as suspension lengths and these different things, because they do realize, I mean, you got to think they do, because some of the comments I'm getting right here about Goodell just being a terrible commissioner and running the NFL into the ground, and I mean, they do have to realize that we're not the only ones. And the guys hitting me up here are not the only people on Facebook and Twitter that feel this way. You're seeing it too. They do have to realize that there's some changes across the board that need to be made in these different cases, different suspensions, all of that, just so you don't appear to the public to be so clueless to the reality that everybody else lives in, you know?
Yeah, and part of it's just fandom, and that's the nature of being a fan, and you're always going to blame Roger Goodell or the NFL or whoever for taking away the great player from your team. But people who are using logic and, can step back from the situation can see that Roger Goodell didn't take Josh Gordon away from the Browns.
No.
Josh Gordon took Josh Gordon away from the Browns. And that's why I said, and you look at it today, one of the things that strikes me most after it's the fact that this entire time that this has been going on, Josh Gordon hasn't been in rehab getting help. He's been practicing. He's been out on the field for the Browns instead of doing what he should have been. If you look in Arizona, with John Abraham, who got arrested for a DUI. And it's his second DUI, and he's probably going to be suspended somewhere down the line. Yeah. He didn't go to arrest in June, and it came out when training camp started. Obviously, everyone in Arizona was like, where the heck's Abraham? And the fact understood he needed help, and he eventually got back to training camp last week. But the key, first off, is if you have a problem, is to get help. And that's the aspect of it where Josh Gordon is just, way behind the curve.
And I understand that completely. And don't confuse the two. You and I have talked about this. I've gotten into arguments with people when I say, hey, this is, at the end of the day, this is Josh Gordon's fault. I just simply meant, and we've already seen, they've already talked about with the domestic violence penalties being increased and that, just the appearance of inequity and the way people have talked about the unequal punishments. That's more what I meant by the league is going to have to make some tweaks and some changes to some of these things so that they don't appear to be so stuck in solid, you know what I mean, and stuck in another era. That's more what I meant. I am 100%.
Yeah, and I understand, and I've been trying to do my best to explain why that is, and again, it's not just because of the league. It's also because of the players.
Yes.
The players have collectively bargained this agreement also. So, it's not exactly like players are really just killing themselves to think, we want to get suspended for other issues. The NFLPA would fight for Ray Rice just like they would fight for Josh Gordon. And they don't want any of their players facing these.
Let me jump in. Just wanted to tell you, I just got sent to me a text message, as you were saying, to clarify what we're talking about too. Apparently, even though it is a 1-year suspension due to the way this thing dragged out, it looks like the way the NFL is phrasing it anyway, that Josh Gordon will miss the entire 2014 season. He is then eligible to apply for reinstatement, and based on what he does between now and then, the NFL would then determine whether they reinstate him for training camp of next year. So assuming that he does get some help and stay clean and not have any other cases come up in the meantime, then perhaps he will not be punished, and the Browns won't be punished by dragging it into training camp camp of next year, that does sound like an equitable way to say, here's your suspension, but we're not going to go totally draconian on the other end.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I'm glad they did that, and it shows the fact that they understand the process took too long for whatever reason. It's probably another indication that we'll never get a reason why, but
yeah.
The fact that, if he does do the right things, he'll be able to be there at the start of training camp instead of late into August. That makes a lot of sense. And, it's still not going to be, obviously, the 16 games means more than anything else.
Oh, yeah.
As far as football goes. But, we'll see. I've seen no evidence that this is a guy who understands what's going on. So right now, I don't have much hope to say he's going to be doing the right things, but hopefully he'll prove me wrong.
And I agree, and hopefully he proves wrong, and hopefully he can clean himself up. Because as we've seen, he has the potential to be a great story or to be a 30 for 30, as we all know, man. Very simply, he could be the greatest that never was. That'll be the title of it right there. The greatest wide receiver that never happened, And
well, I think it's a 30 for 30 either way. It's just a matter of what the narrative
is. For sure, yeah.
It's either a redemption narrative or it's one or the other. Because obviously the talent is already there. We've already seen him do it on the field. So it's either going to be a redemption story, or it's going to be, as you said, the greatest that never was.
I mean, because look at his body of work. It is such a small sample size to be in the top 10 all-time single season. Like, that's one of those rare coincidences where if it ended that way, you would go, man, what could have been? I mean, just what could have been, because it's right there. I mean, it's one thing to say, a guy had a good season, but when they have that level of good, it's interesting. So we'll see. It's on him, as you said. I want to shift a little bit while I've got you to some of the current guys that are going to be a part of this team. Actually, this works out because up from your way, Philadelphia, a couple of guys, I don't know what you know about these guys, but I saw Barton and Donald Hawkins, Kareem Barton, Donald Hawkins picked up on waivers, a couple of big offensive linemen that the Browns were granted on waivers this week. I know both younger guys. I think they're both rookies, I believe. And anything to these guys that you saw in training camp, or are they just some camp bodies?
Well, they were camp guys here. They weren't really in the mix for any of the backup jobs or anything, and that's the reason. You obviously, if you're in that first cut down from 90 to 75, you're not really considered a chance to make the roster. I think it's more indicative of the way people around the league kind of look at what's going on in Philadelphia. And you see it all the time with Green Bay. You see it all the time with New England. People have such respect for what Ted Thompson does with the Packers and what the Patriots do. You always see their guys seemingly picked up. I think the Eagles are getting there because so many people have respect for the program Chip Kelly runs and the innovation aspect of it. So to me, it's obviously a position that lacks depth in Cleveland, so it's just an opportunity to look at two guys that they probably had their eye on as rookie free agents. If you picked them up, kind of said, well, if they think they have something, maybe they do. But when you're brought in this late, it's really difficult. Barring significant injuries, it's really difficult to say you're going to make the final 53. Could be an indication they have an eye on one of the two for the practice squad.
Yeah. I was just curious if you saw any flashes out of those guys in the limited work that they got there during camp. I know they were both backups. Anything to them, or nothing that you remember?
No, well, and that's the one part that concerns me is because the Eagles, people haven't seen, they have some depth issues on the offensive line, and especially now that Lane Johnson's suspended for the first 4 games. And their backups are guys like Andrew Gardner and Matt Tobin and David Molk. These are not names you've heard of. So these were the guys who were running ahead of the people the Browns picked up. So And the fact they weren't even getting any second team reps, says something to me. So I think it's more of a reputation-based waiver pickup than anything else, because I didn't see either of those two guys even push for second team reps.
All right. You know what? Last thing here about the Browns, and again, I don't know how much you can comment on. Forget the quarterbacks and all of that stuff and the offense. Anything you've seen, anybody that has stuck out to you in the first couple of preseason games as a surprise? I know one guy we've mentioned is Armani Bryant. Seen a bit of what he's shown there. Obviously, the rookies, that's different. Kersey, Bitonio, I think some stuff was expected from those guys. But has anybody kind of flashed to you that you didn't have on your notepad, good or bad, perhaps, when you were looking at the Browns preseason so far?
Well, I'm a little disappointed. Let me preface, I think I've been given all bad information. So let me preface, I like what I've seen out of Christian Kirksey.
Yeah.
I think eventually he's going to, fit in right next to Carlos Dansby, and there's going to be two solid inside linebackers there. And I think that's a good thing. But, I really questioned the move for Justin Gilbert that high because I thought he was a raw player coming out. And I haven't seen a ton. I mean, athletically, he's off the charts, so I get it, because his ceiling, thing you look for in a corner today, as far as length, athleticism, recovery speed, things like that. But I thought he was a very raw player at Oklahoma State, and I thought Darqueze Denard particularly was the best corner in the draft, and even Kyle Fuller were going to be more ready to play. And I think he's only, kind of stamped my views on that. And I think it's going to be an issue, because anybody who thought because of his athletic ability he's going to fit right in next to Joe Hayden and you're going to have two lockdown corners, I think it's going to be a while. I think he's going to struggle early in his career.
A lot of people, we talked about that too. Some people, just the conference and all of that. I will say that as much as he got smoked, I mean, if you're looking for a silver lining with Gilbert, I did see him adjusting a little bit as the second half went on. But then again, you got that, you got different levels of competition. That's why the preseason is so hard to get too much of a read off of stuff. I did like to see it appeared that he learned from some of his mistakes as the game went on. So, clearly you don't write the book on a guy early. I'm with you. That was a bit alarming, but maybe getting thrown, people that outside of Cleveland may not realize that the top several cornerbacks and Desir weren't out there. Screen, Hayden, Desir. So he really got baptism by fire being out there. So maybe that's a good thing, because like Coach Pettin did bring up, one of the biggest things they didn't like about the way Gilbert played is that he was letting guys dictate to him instead of him dictating. He was playing soft on guys. He was not letting the situations dictate his pressure and how tight and press and all of that. And some of that comes with learning. So, maybe by him being attacked the way he did, hopefully he can he learned some from that. And I thought I saw a little bit of that as the game went on, but maybe you saw it differently than me. Still, you don't want to get smoked that bad for a first round top 10 draft pick. But same time, I did see some adjusting going on too.
Well, that's the part where I'm concerned, because there's a difference,
yes,
believe it or not, from being a top 10 pick and number 8 overall than being say 23rd or 25th, 24th, whatever Denard was, or there's more pressure on you, and when you get that top 10 tag put on you, you're pretty much labeled as a can't miss type of guy. I didn't think going into the process Justin Gilbert belonged in the top 10. I still don't think. I think, don't get me wrong, I had him rated as a first-round pick. I had him more of a guy going from 15 to 20, and probably in my mind he should have went from 20 on down. And most of the concerns are the fact that, I think it's an athlete with the base skill set, but I don't necessarily think he knows how to play the cornerback position, even at the college level. And then you amp it up to the pro level, where things are so much more difficult. I just think it's going to be a real rocky start. And that's not to say because the ceiling remains. The ceiling is the same, whether you think he's a top 10 pick or as I did,